Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. Yeah, really nice to see you today. It's great to have this session, and thank you all for coming along. So we're just letting people in through the waiting room. So we'll kick off in just a couple of seconds, but just got a few people connecting to audio, and then we will get started. So yeah, just one more person, and then we'll get going. So okay, great. Well, look, nice to see you, everybody. Thank you for coming along today. So for those of you I haven't met before, my name's Dan Wells. I'm the founder and the CEO of the GrowCFO business. And for those of you that are new to GrowCFO, we are a global network of about 100,000 finance leaders. And we run lots of different events, including today's event, which is part of An Audience With series, which we run on a monthly basis. And I'm really excited about having Jimmy today. Looking forward to hearing his views on things that are going to be sort of really insightful and valuable to you. So welcome, Jimmy.
Thank you.
No pressure, Jimmy. No pressure.
And as part of this series, we're really proud to partner with Andrew Waters, who's from Xander as well. So yeah, for those of you that haven't come across Andrew, I'm sure Andrew will give a quick introduction, but we have a partnership with Xander Search and thoroughly recommend those for people that ever need any help with any search. So yeah, so what we're going to do, the session's for an hour today, and I know there's lots of questions that have already been organised. And also, if you do have any questions during the session, please do use the chat function. I'm sure you're probably all familiar with it in Zoom, so do feel free to use that at any point, and then Andrew will ask your question at the appropriate time. But I'm going to hand over to Andrew to chair the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you very much. Nice to see you all. There are a number of people that are logging in still, so we'll keep adding them in as we go through. And obviously the session will be recorded for some of the cohorts and the different members of GrowCFO as well. So quick introduction. Yeah, my name's Andrew Waters, as you can tell by the name on the screen. I'm the founder of Xander. We're an exec search firm for finance leaders and CFOs. We partner with GrowCFO on both the CFO program and the future CFO program, and love chairing these an audience with sessions. Tends to be startup and scale up CFOs. And today, welcome and delighted to have Jimmy with us. And I'm ready to kind of pepper him with lots of questions, which will be good fun. And also, as Dan alluded to, do feel free to kind of add anything in the chat, which I will try and link with the questions, but we'll leave 10, 15 minutes towards the end so that you can also, I could put those questions to Jimmy. So before we kind of kick off into the questions, Jimmy, it would be great to kind of get a brief intro of your kind of holistic view of your career. That'd be good.
Great. So thank you for having me. My name is Jimmy Vassilas. I am currently the CFO of Santé Vet, based in France, which is the leader in pet health insurance, pet insurance products and services. Before that, I spent my entire career in tech and SaaS and scale up. I spent 17 years at Autodesk, which did manufacturing software and special effects software, as well as fintech at Receipt Bank, now Dext, and then market research tech at Zappy. So I spent my entire career in tech. As you can tell from the accent, I'm not British, but I'm from Canada. But I spent most of the last 20 years in the UK. So that's a very helicopter view of my experience.
Love it. Love it. Right. So we're going to do a quick fire round now. I'm going to unload, I think, 10 or so questions at you. And we need one-word answers or as quick a response as possible.
Okay.
So let's go. Startup or scale up?
A scale up.
If you could only have 2 external advisors, who would you choose?
I would choose a former CEO that I worked with who really entrepreneurial, and a former CFO that I worked with who really is excellent and provided great advice.
Best finance systems or technologies you or your team have used?
So it's not a finance system, but it's a great way to dig into the the revenue, it's Salesforce, because I like to get deep into the revenue and the pipeline. But anything on the finance side that digitizes manual processes. Sorry, that's not a one-word answer, but
we'll let you off. Should areas outside of finance report into the CFO role?
yes.
If so, what?
I'm a big believer in legal. So you look at risk and BI or the data team to really drive data and dashboards.
I don't need names for this one. Biggest hiring mistake? I've asked this question before and someone started giving me a few names and I was like, don't get me in trouble. Just give me the reason and the context.
Hiring too quickly. So you have a gap, somebody left, and so you're panicked because all this work is going to fall on you and the team, and you just hire too quickly. You need to really take your time and make sure that you find the right person with the skills and the right attitude and energy.
Best tip for managing the superstar?
This is really good. Communication, just aligning on priorities, the vision, establishing the cadence of one-on-ones and discussion, and then letting them go.
What's the relationship between non-financial data and your current CFO role?
Oh, it's very important. You absolutely need it so that you can challenge the forecast and see opportunities, right, for potentially monetizing something or cross-selling and upselling opportunities, or risks in the forecast, right? Additional costs that may come or additional pressure on the revenue. So it's really, really key.
What is one of your superpowers that has been able to progress you to a CFO role?
It is the business partnering skill. It's really knowing how to sit with different stakeholders at different levels, communicate, communicate the issues and really align quickly. So it's the business partnering aspect of what I do.
And you can give me a few more words on this one. At what stage did you feel confident with that skill? Is that something that you felt that you've had naturally, but you've obviously worked on? But from a CFO perspective, where your peers are C-suite and the boss is the CEO and not a finance leader anymore, at what stage did you feel comfortable with that business partnering ability?
So so early on in the career, because at Autodesk, I really had the opportunity to partner and be a finance business partner. At one point, that was my role. And I spent a lot of time working with the leadership team of a division, and I refined that. So when I took on my first CFO role, I had that skill. It was now just expanding the breadth of what I managed, right, in terms of the full P&L, from compliance to the different aspects of a full finance function, including legal as well. So I was kind of lucky with my experience that I got that early on, but it's a process where you always have to refine it because your audience changes. Even as a CEO founder versus a CEO who's just an operational person who knows how to kind of scale businesses, very different conversations that you have with them, right? So it's tailoring that to the person and the experience of that person.
Do you have a development area still, and what are you working on?
There's always development areas that one is working on, right? You're never done. I think it's really around right now it's partnering with the tech team and making sure we drive what we need to do here in terms of digital transformation, but there's always communication, the cadence, and really tailoring that communication to the teams that you have, the skills that you have, and where you need to go. So I'm always trying to refine and change things up to say, okay, it's not a formula, right? We're not going to have a standing, every day 10-minute one-on-one and then a longer 1 hour meeting every week, et cetera. It's really trying to tailor it and trying to make sure that my style evolves as I partner different people and have different size and skilled teams.
Last one on the quickfire round. I just need a number. How ready were you for your first CFO role from 0 to 10?
I would say 6. If I'm being honest, you're never really ready, because it's normally you come from one point of view doing one thing, and then suddenly you have a breadth of coverage, and everything is important and everything is urgent. So it's a real balancing act to try and stay focused and prioritize.
Yeah. And from a desire of being a CFO, where would you have said you were when you got that first opportunity from 0 to 10?
In terms of me wanting to be a CFO,
Yeah. Yeah.
10 wanted it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's really interesting. What was the biggest, you said 6, which is, I've heard that number used an awful lot for their first CFO role. What was the biggest shock to the system that you felt that you were ready for, that then actually you turned out that there was a bit more of a learning curve there than you first thought?
I think it was the extent of data that was needed, and some of the compliance issues, and some of the what I would call hygiene that needed to take care of, right? Just making sure that closing the monthly books and making sure the data accuracy and integrity was there, was something that I had to dive into. And I wasn't expecting it, but it was something I had to roll up my sleeves and just dive into.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Thank you very much. That was good. I'll give you a 9 out of 10 for your quick fire round, which is a good score.
Thank you very much.
No, no worries. So kind of more structured questions now. I'm keen to get your thoughts on these, and the people listening, do feel free to put any questions in chat or message me directly. But what were some of the things you did consistently in your career early on to advance it?
Really good question. So what I did, so when I was at Autodesk, because I spent a good chunk of my career at Autodesk, is I had I wanted to, I'm going to be completely candid. I wanted to be director. I was a finance manager. I wanted to be director. And I think I saw my career as vertical. You go from, one position, promoted up, promoted up, promoted up. And my manager at the time, who's currently the CFO of Autodesk, she gave me some great advice. And she said, horizontal moves are almost as important as vertical moves, because you see more of the business, you see different things, you partner with different peoples. And so that's what I did early on. And I did that consistently. I accepted horizontal moves, and prepared myself as I grew stronger and more confident in partnering different types of areas, geographies, looking at different things, being involved in different projects. I accumulated a lot of experience in, different angles of the finance team and department. So that really helped me with my career. And so I grew in confidence. So when that first kind of finance director role, senior leader role came up, I felt that I was ready for it, and I felt that I was confident because I had done so much and did those horizontal moves. So that was something I did consistently early on in my career, and I wasn't so focused on going up and up and up.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And I guess that enables you to double down in the areas where you've got strengths, but also work on exposure to development areas that you didn't have exposure to month-end reporting or data analytics, FinOps, etc. Is there anything you would have done differently or sooner in your career upon reflection?
I think there's a couple of things. So really early on in my career, I would have focused on building a network of mentors, right? Because mentorship is quite important, and I learned that, and I now have really good relationships with the last 4 roles that I've had, and I keep in contact with them. It's really important, not only my former managers and CFOs, but also the people that reported to me. It's really important for me to stay in contact with them. So that should have done that early on in my career, like really early on. But there's another thing a colleague of mine told me, like, again, pretty early in my career, that they did a whole inventory of all the roles and the jobs that they had, what they liked about it and what they didn't like about those roles, being really specific, and why they didn't like it and why they liked it, right? And it really helps you focus on, okay, that next opportunity, where is it that you want to go? Why did you like something? And where you should kind of focus your interest and your career. And I felt that helped me, because when I started doing it after my colleague mentioned it, then you're really crystal clear into the opportunities that are really good for you and where you want to go, versus just being guided by whatever comes your way, right? You become really quite focused on where you want to go. So really taking an inventory of what you liked and what you didn't like, and why you didn't like and like them.
You obviously stayed at Autodesk for a long time. What kept you there for so long?
It was and still is a great company. The finance team was just extraordinary. I enjoyed working with them, but more importantly, every couple of years I changed roles, and it was those horizontal moves that really kept it interesting, and I kept on learning. I was always learning. I mean, if I was doing the same job, I mean, I would have left a long time ago, way before the 17 years, but they kept it interesting for me. I kept on changing, really exploring different parts of the business, and they moved me from Canada to London. Supposed to be a 10-month gig. It ended up being a several years gig, and ended up staying in the UK for 20 years. So it's just that continual learning, really different challenges, different opportunities, and just changing every couple of years that kept me there for 17 years.
And what drove the move out of Autodesk then in the end?
It was so it was really interesting because they acquired a company, and then they kind of put me in as the finance director to help shepherd that company and eventually integrate them. So when I finally did integrate them, well, you didn't need a standalone finance director for a subsidiary that's fully integrated. So the successful integration meant that I had to look for something else internally. And I had opportunities to move to San Francisco, where the headquarters was, and I just personally didn't want to, move back to North America. I wanted to stay in Europe, so I started exploring opportunities outside of Autodesk.
And Receipt Bank, why choose that business than the first kind of probably an earlier stage venture, or a pretty early stage venture at that time?
So Receipt Bank is fintech. It's now Dext. They rebranded. It's I was always interested in fintech, and at the time I was exploring different opportunities. And what struck me about Receipt Bank was the product. It was aimed at accountants, so I knew it quite close to heart what this product can do, and I was at one point in time a target user of this product, so it resonated really well with me. And it's funny because the finance team were actually solicited in terms of product innovation, and what do you think about this, Jimmy? But the product resonated with me, but more importantly, the team and the people that I met during the interview process, really, really smart, very ambitious. I met with the two founders, and I was really impressed with their vision, their entrepreneurial style. Really, really liked that. And I thought, coming from a very corporate environment that is Autodesk and I absolutely loved, moving to Receipt Bank, which was significantly smaller, it would allow me again to exercise in different skills and learn different things. And so I felt that I can bring quite a bit of value from what I learned from Autodesk to Receipt Bank. And I love the entrepreneurial agility, innovative approach that they had at the time.
You may have had interviews during your time at Autodesk externally, I don't know, but when you and internal interviews as well, but that external interview process for a number one role after a number of 17 years in one business, how was that?
It was interesting. It was interesting because leaving a company that you've been at for 17 years is a big decision, and knowing where you want to go and what you like doing is so key, right? And it goes back to that inventory of what you like and what you didn't like to guide you into that next opportunity. So I had done that, and I was pretty clear what I liked and what I didn't like and what I wanted to continue. So it was being that number one, partnering the CEO, really managing the full end-to-end finance function and legal function. That's what really kind of drove me and made it interesting. So where I saw opportunities that fit where I wanted to go, I explored them. Absolutely.
What did you do proactively to get noticed for those types of opportunities? Because obviously you're coming from I don't know how many employees did Autodesk have? 50,000, 20,000?
Oh no, about 9,000, 8,500,
Okay.
9,000, but
Yeah.
significantly bigger than Receipt Bank.
Receipt Bank was what, 100 then, or?
It was about 200 and something. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. How did you get your foot in the door for those types of opportunities? Because obviously you need to be visible and approached in the right way to convince people you're ready to be that hands-on.
I think it was a combination of things. It was my network that I had built, and as well I used recruiters at Autodesk, and so I just leveraged the network that I knew and started putting feelers out to say, hey, keen on looking at something. Let me know if there's any opportunity out there. So that's how I did it. I relied on my network and tapped into that, to be quite honest.
And how were the first few months in that role?
It was really good. It was really good, and I think it was a period of, you come in with a bag of knowledge and tricks that you've learned over the years, right? In this certain corporate framework, and then you come into a smaller company where you have to use all that and apply them, but really be pragmatic about it, right? You're not going to suddenly develop, a whole bunch of, policies and procedures that are very lengthy and no one's going to read them, right? So you really got to be flexible in terms of how you take what you've learned and apply them so that there is control, there is, integrity around the data, and there is, compliance, and you're able to deliver analysis and insights, but not slow down innovation and not slow down just the speed to market in which, a smaller company needs to have. And I think that the key was really focusing on, monthly reviews, quarterly reviews, and just making sure you share the data, share the analysis, and get the feedback from the business to understand and decide on what the next steps are. Do we go deeper? Do we retract? Do we go elsewhere, etc.? So it was a bit of an adjustment. It was a bit of an adjustment, in that I had to tweak my approach, tweak how I engage with the different, stakeholders, and just allow room for innovation and not be as corporate as I was used to.
And obviously you're naturally engaging, high energy, kind of positive individual, and entrepreneurial environment is what you wanted to go into. So I'm sure you were chomping at the bit when you got in there to try and jump in, make a difference. What helped you in those first 6 months to make it a successful kind of transition?
This is really good. So great question, because I think what I experienced there, and I got advice from the CEO, and he said, for the first 2 weeks, you're going to be doing finance your entire time here. For the first 2 weeks, do not do anything finance. Obviously, talk to your team, get to know your team, but spend 2 weeks getting to know the product, listening to sales calls, really understanding the go-to-market, the marketing, just everything non-finance. And it was so key because it allowed me to quickly absorb the business. So as I started developing my plan in terms of, okay, this is what I need to focus on and what my team needs to focus on, I have this base of the business and how it works and what their hurdles and problems are, so I can bake that into my plan. So I think those first two weeks of just diving into the business and not doing anything financial except for getting to know the team really worked. And I recommend that for anyone starting a new job. Just get to know as much as you can. Just really dive into the business. And then after that, it was I made it a point of really getting involved in stuff that isn't related to finance, right? So I would sit in product review meetings. I would sit with, the C-suite, their leadership meetings, just to listen in and provide support. And if there was financial context and information that I needed to give, I would give it. But I would make a point of just sitting into the various leadership meetings, so I would get a sense of, what their struggles are, what they're dealing with, and how we can help them. So really getting involved in things outside of finance was a way of not only building the relationships with my peers, the other C-suites, but also getting to know what their problems are and how we can help them.
I think that's a really insightful idea, which I've heard a bit, but not much. Like I'd say, most founders or CEOs won't say that because they've got you've got a burning hole in finance because maybe you've joined with no handover, or maybe you've joined when the handover needs to happen because the current CFO is leaving in 2 weeks, 3 weeks time, and therefore why on earth would they get this person not to spend 2 to 3 weeks on finance with the person that's handing over? But there's a couple of points there that I think are super interesting. One, you get to observe the key data points, the operational running, the unit economics of the business, the pain points, and it avoids an enthusiastic first-time CFO being a bull in a china shop, and actually get to know the subtleties of the leadership team and who needs to be communicated in different ways and how to present the data and the communication and the argument in different ways. It also, I think, internally sends a message that this individual is not to be messed with because they're poised, they're considering and reviewing what the business is doing for a 2 to 3 week period before then setting an action plan and a course. And I think that that's a really good way of, sometimes we talk to finance directors that are looking to get the internal move to a CFO. And that's tough because you've been one of the gang, you've been one of the management or the senior leadership team, but you've not been a C-suite in that business. And you're not used to saying no, and you're not used to presenting an argument in a certain way. And in some ways, it's easier to come into a new business as a CFO than it is to get the internal promotion because you've got to internally readjust your brand. And I think going into a new business like you've described, having 2 to 3 weeks to subliminally give that air of review and authority helps the amount that you can influence the business.
I agree. It adds to your credibility as well because you've heard and your plan addresses some of the pain points and it allows you to get the other teams on board because they feel listened to and your plan addresses what their problematic is, right? So I think it adds to your credibility. It allows you to really refine what your plan is, and it's part of that business partnering to get people on board and really influence, the financial agenda, right?
The other thing is obviously, to be a CFO, FD, there's an academic ability and there's also an intellectual and hands-on ability to spot things. And when you get put into a marketing conversation or a product conversation, there's this helicopter view of what the problem is, where you've got a chief marketing officer that's been in this, or a marketing team or a product team that's been in this problem for 6 months. And, this individual from a CFO perspective may have some pearls of wisdom. So very, very interesting. What's your approach to kind of building teams as a CFO? Are there any core principles that you try and stick to?
I think it's so to build a good team, you really got to know them, right? What makes them tick, what their ambitions are, what they want to achieve in their career and their time at the company, and then just really look at what you need to achieve and just make sure that you have the people doing the right things that matches their skills and their abilities and interests versus what you need them to do. And I think it's really about communication. It's really about just understanding what makes them tick and then creating an organization that not only delivers what your vision is, but helps them to grow. Because what you don't want is somebody just in a box doing this, but that's all you do. Don't look to do anything else, right? You'd be surprised, people want to present in front of the leadership team, want to kind of tackle different issues or get involved in certain projects. So as soon as you start talking to them and really understanding their interests, you can then kind of calibrate to make sure you address their career needs and their interests. But more importantly, I feel that as a CFO, as a leader, you got to have a vision of where you're going with the finance team, what you want the finance team to be in the business, what brand that finance team should have within the business. And then, of course, we articulate the vision and mission of the company, right, within the finance team. So always having that vision, and so people know exactly where you want to take the finance team, is really key. And that way you get engagement and people understand why we're focusing on certain things, why we're focusing on these dashboards, or the QBRs and country P&Ls or what have you. And they understand where we're going, and so they're more than willing to help achieve that goal. So having a vision for me is absolutely key.
Do you have different visions depending on the size, the sector of the business that you're in?
I would say the vision, no, because it's always the same in terms of I want finance to be more than finance. I want everyone to have a business partnering mindset, everyone across the business, right? We don't want people to just say, no, that won't work. It's more like, okay, let's talk to see how we can make this work, right? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And at least both parties know the reasons behind it. But the first instance is, let's work with the business to see what we can do. So it's about having a business partner mindset. And of course, above all, like making sure that, we close the month in the right amount of time, not too late. The data is correct, and the integrity of data is unquestioned. And of course, we deliver insights and analysis. So it's really important for me that our brand is that, right? We deliver the insights, we help the business in decision making, we provide that kind of finance context and almost training to the business, so they know what EBITDA means, they know what the KPIs are, what CAC is, what ARR is, and they know why it's so important to the business. So that fundamental, that vision is always there. The priorities, however, change based on the urgent needs and some of the things that we need to fix. But the vision is always kind of the same.
Have you got a blueprint for how you'd like to structure a finance team? Obviously there's the old argument of FinOps, controllership, and commercial finance FP&A, and then some like having a broad number two with smaller teams below. What have you seen work for you?
I think it's pretty much that. I like to have an FP&A team or a commercial finance team that really partners the business. I like a controllership team that really focuses on making sure that we close the books and we pay our staff, we pay our suppliers, and collect the cash. Really, just that hygiene is done and done efficiently. And then, of course, FinOps is really key, right? Because that digital piece, the digitalization of finance, is how we're going to be able to scale. It's not just the tech team, right? In the finance team, you always have to be looking at what are the manual processes, what are the commoditized tasks, and how do we just automate that so that people can then focus on more value-added stuff, and everyone wants to get out of the routine and the cleaning and the scrubbing of data and into more valuable stuff. So yeah, my view is FP&A, commercial finance, controllership team, and of course that foundation of FinOps, where we continually challenge and stamp out manual processes.
Jump around a little bit here because there's a question
Sure.
from Laura which comes back to a different point. So the way I read this is within your period at Autodesk, how did you push yourself to get the opportunity to work on different projects and different areas of the company to expand your horizontal knowledge? And did you have to walk over anyone to get that opportunity? Is basically how I'm reading it. Obviously within a larger business, there's going to be competition for horizontal moves and expanding your knowledge. So how did you approach that subtly?
It's a really good question, because in a big corporation, it was a very big finance team, right? It was, if I recall, about 400 strong finance, right? So it's a really big team. I think the way I handled it really, and the advice I got from my mentor in Autodesk at the time, is there's two things, right? The job you're doing today, be great at it, right? So that you knock it out of the park and all the reviews are, you're doing a great job, and there's no question around that. So be great at what you're doing and deliver what you're expected to in the role that you have. So there's no question around that. And the second thing is have one-on-ones with as many people as you can, even the top person, the CFO, the different VPs of finance, the different departments. Just have one-on-ones and say, hey, half an hour, pick your brain on something, or talk to me about your world. I'm interested in that. And so really put yourself out there in terms of showing the curiosity, showing your interest, and getting yourself visible to the different parts of the organization, but also being clear on what you want and where you want to go. So for example, if you're in commercial finance and you're interested in investor relations, go have a chat with the leader of investor relations, talk about what they do, how they do it, and maybe if you have a spare couple of hours, sit on an earnings call and listen in on how they do, and show that curiosity and interest. And so when an opportunity comes, that your name pops up in their head because, I just had a conversation, a month ago, and that person seems interested, and maybe we'll talk to them. So it's really around networking within the business and putting yourself out there and just having those conversations and getting to know the other parts of the business. I hope that makes sense. And I didn't step over anybody, because it's, if you're doing your job well and you show the interest, then, your name bubbles up to the top.
Yeah, I agree. You haven't got sharp elbows.
No, I don't.
But it's really interesting. We do within the Future CFO program, we do a piece on growing your brand, or enhancing your personal brand, and you need it to always be 12 months ahead of where you are to get the opportunity that you want. And you've got to do amazing work, but you've also got to be visible doing it, else you just fly under the radar and don't get the recognition that you deserve. And those individuals that are really visible but doing crap work are just all icing, no cake. So it's best to start with doing amazing work and being honest about your career ambitions, and opportunities will come. If you're consistently delivering and consistently being honest that you want to be a CFO one day, then it's very difficult for people to not keep you in mind for opportunities that are going to move you in that trajectory. So I think that's a really interesting point. I think with regard to kind of moving into a new CFO role and having access to new meetings and sticking your oar into product and marketing and sales conversations is clearly a lot easier if the CEO has asked for that to happen. But a CFO going into a new role where they've not been given the remit of having 3 weeks not doing finance, how they still need to get into some of those meetings, right? So how would you approach that if it's not been given the green light from the founder or the CEO?
A really good question. I think the first thing is you would have one-on-ones with the different kind of C-suites, and make sure you have those in the calendar, a dedicated time, half an hour to an hour, to really talk and exchange. And that's the first bit, right? So you gotta stay close with your colleagues. So if you're coming in as a first-time CFO, you have to make sure you talk to the chief marketing officer, chief tech, chief product officer, and listen to them and have that forum, right? Get it in the calendar immediately. And then as you go through and you share your plans and they talk about their struggles, etc., and you also validate, hey, this is what I'm doing, what do you think about that, etc., your credibility grows. And then eventually when you ask them, hey, can I just sit in a meeting, etc., they'll never say no. Right? They'll always want you to kind of assist in case there are questions, and the team is always interested in the finance point of view, I found. But another way to do that is to go in through the finance training, right? Because I'm a big believer in making sure everyone knows the finance blueprint. why we're tracking the KPIs that we track, how it all relates to cash, because that's always something that finance manages with the CEO, and even other C-suite members don't see exactly the impact and the implications on cash. So get your foot in the door by saying, hey, let me talk to your team about the finance and what we're doing and what the P&L looks like and the KPIs that we're tracking that they may not be aware of. And then you get yourself in the door, you talk to them, you explore with them, and then you just go back periodically on the guise of, hey, let's talk about some finance issues. But you need to kind of make sure that you have those one-on-ones, and over time your colleagues are going to be your biggest champion to convince the CEO, if he doesn't believe that you should be in there, that you should be in there. So make sure you influence your colleagues to get them to champion that, hey, no, this CFO needs to be in my meetings, and I want them there for help and support. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. I think you probably answered my next question, actually, which is a good segue. Not necessarily planned, but I was keen to see how you approach building relationships with your C-suite peers, which we've kind of touched on, but also what are the benefits of nailing this?
Yeah. So I think what's really important is that your success as a CFO at that level is obviously your relationship with the CEO. That's really key, and your peers. So the way I approach it, and I feel that it's really important, is you start with helping them out, getting them the data they need to make the decisions that data-led decisions, right? Because what you find is a lot of people gut feeling, I guess it's this, and so help them with the data and support them and support the vision, but also supply them the information they need so that they're able to make a better decision and really be their partner, right? Sit down with them and say, hey, how can I help you manage whatever you're dealing with in your staff, et cetera. So really being that support to them and understanding their problematic, and then helping with finance training, reports, data analysis, so that they're able to take that and then better manage their department. That's your way in, right? Really data and support and business partnering.
And in terms of the benefits of that, obviously it's greater chance of influencing strategic decisions that you think the business needs to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's all about relationships and influencing them and making sure they understand your agenda and why what you want to achieve is important, and they support you. And equally, you need to support them if you believe in their vision and mission and where they're taking the team. And so it becomes a unified and aligned C-suite, right? It's really, really important, because the worst thing is to not agree and then that misalignment then trickles down through the next level, and then the next level say, well, I don't agree with you, and then it just permeates throughout. So that C-suite needs to be completely aligned. You may disagree, but you disagree and commit, and then you move on. So it's really important that you have that relationship so that you can share why you disagree, and then debate it, and then the alignment just has to be there.
How do you face or battle through challenging economic or trading times?
Data. So when I was at Zappi, COVID hit and lockdown happened, and the company was proactive. So before, in the UK, they announced the lockdown, we said, okay, everyone work from home this week, and then we'll see where the government goes. It'll be a couple of weeks, work from home for a couple of weeks, right? Famous last words. But when the lockdown happened, and then there was this big uncertainty, the forecast came into question, and everyone started wondering, okay, what does this mean for us? And will clients continue to spend, right? So immediately what we did is we set up a daily, 15-minute call where we looked at, sales, cash position, accounts receivable, money coming in, so that we can quickly spot trends. So it's really around mobilizing in terms of, okay, what do we need to do to track so that we can quickly respond to trends. Now, obviously, COVID is an extreme example of how you react quickly to a pandemic, but it's really around ramping up the cadence of information and the type of analysis that you provide in a speedy fashion so that you're able to predict trends and then help the business decide, okay, what do we need to do quickly so that we manage cash, we manage our goals, revenue and expenses, etc.
What's your view of the CFO being the storyteller for the business, and how have you, I guess, developed your skills in that area over time?
I think it's key, right? Because as a CFO, you're going to be giving all hands and firesides or whatever you call them to the entire staff, right? And so if you think about what do you want to communicate, you're not going to present a full P&L to the entire team, right? And say this is every single line of the P&L. You want like 3 main numbers and why they're important. So that's the type of, for that audience, you got to make sure, okay, what message do I want to impart? And if there's actions, what actions do I need people to think about and start thinking about and actioning, right? So I think it's really important. So storytelling is key, because what you need is to get your message across in a succinct fashion so that you get the action that you think is needed in the business, right? So if it's about focusing on cost control, if it's about focusing on forecast accuracy, then just let's talk about this. Let's look at these 3 points. This is what's happening. What do you think about this? And then you really guide the discussion through the data and not overburdening people with too much data, because otherwise the message is lost. People don't know what to do with the information, and there's just confusion, right? So it's all about storytelling and looking at who you're talking to, different levels of awareness of the finance function and finance acumen, and then just tailoring it to the different audience. So I think storytelling is really key, but it's not one size fits all. You really have to tailor it to who you're speaking to and what you want out of that interaction.
Awesome. I've got a couple of quick questions still to go, but if there's any questions, do feel free to send them through on chat, and or put your hands up. Dan, maybe you could keep an eye out if anyone's got any questions. But just on the storytelling piece, with external parties, bankers, VCs, PE firms, what's your, obviously it's a completely different audience, as we mentioned, but what are the priorities there?
I think, again, depending on who you're speaking to, it's about clarity. And I think it's important to understand the level of detail that people are comfortable with, right? So, my experience is that some boards want a lot of detail, some boards do not want the detail. Maybe they want something offline with a bit more detail and high level during the board meeting. So it's really to understand the audience again and figure out what level of detail they're comfortable with, and also what you want to get out of the interaction. It's back to what do you want to get. If you want to get a robust discussion on marketing and efficiencies in marketing or digital transformation, then focus the presentation around, okay, let me talk to you about this. Here are some numbers. Let's talk about what does this mean, and then the discussion ensues. So it depends again on the audience, the level of detail that they're comfortable with, and I think some homework is needed, offline to figure that out, and then prepare a presentation that meets their needs and what they want to talk about.
Yeah, I think one of the key things there is understanding what that meeting is and what the next meeting is going to be.
Yeah.
When it's pitching for a fundraise, it's knowing the audience, but also knowing the stage of the conversation and tailoring accordingly, and explaining with direct clarity where the business is looking to go and how it's going to do it. With your best advice, any tips you've got for first-time CFOs going into a role next month? What would you do if you're doing it all over again?
I guess the number one tip I would give is, so a new CFO is coming into the role. Your strengths and what you've been doing and where you would naturally lean to right? When stress hits, you're like, okay, I'm going to focus on this. Challenge yourself to make sure that you focus on everything. So I'll give you an example. Through speaking to my network, and I coach a few people in terms of head of finance that become finance directors. They naturally are good on the accounting side, good on the controllership side, good on all those procedural sides, but need to work on the finance business partnering, the influencing side, and how to present and storytelling. But when stress comes and a lot of things need to get done, they default to what they know. So my tip would be, don't naturally default to what you know. Make sure that you focus on the uncomfortable piece that you haven't had a lot of experience in, because that's the piece that you're going to need to flex and going to need to improve on. So don't just default on what you know. Make sure that you balance and focus on the areas that you're not so comfortable with.
Yeah, that's cool. I just had an interesting question come through. I think I might learn from this answer as well. Is there any techniques or things you do when overwhelm kicks in, when you've got all urgent and important?
Yeah.
Work more hours, but hopefully not.
No, well, as finance professionals, it's, at certain times, quarter end is par for the course, right? It's part of our lives. I think when you're overwhelmed and there's like 1,000 different urgent and important things, I think it's really important to step back. And I know that we may not have all the luxury to step back, but even for 30 minutes, and ground yourself into, again, wait a minute. What's the vision? What's the mission? What are our goals, short-term, long-term? Just really go back into it and then reprioritize. Because I guarantee you, not everything is urgent and not everything is important. And then just bucket them into really urgent and important, depending on, who's asking something, and then, influence and negotiate and reset expectations on everything else, and be really ruthless about prioritization. Because you won't be able to do everything. And if you try to do everything, you're going to deliver, not up to your expectations. Let's just put it that way. So you'd rather do a couple of things well than a lot of things mediocre.
Is there anything that, from your skill set, obviously you talked about business partnering and data a lot, if you could only make, for you then, in terms of that being your core strength area, if you were going into a new CFO role and you only had one hire, you had a small team, then does that define what your one key senior hire would be?
I think so, yeah. If I had a small team and I would have just one hire, I think I would hire very skilled head of FP&A. And somebody who's probably able to do the details, but wants to step up and do a lot more. And that way you drive that business partnering, the modeling, the forecasting and budgeting, which is really key to the business. And I think if I had one key person I would hire that. Again, assuming that the hygiene component, you're paying salaries, you're paying vendors, you're collecting cash, you're closing the books, all that is being done. That would be the one person I would absolutely hire.
Another question quickly. How do you approach cash management? Sorry, it's cut off there, the rest of the question. How do you approach cash management and where to allocate cash?
So it's a really good question. So cash management is all about forecasting, right? You really got to know your ins and outs and really understand the forecast so that you get that accurate in terms of projecting cash out over the next rest of the year and beyond that. In terms of how you allocate cash, I think it is all about understanding the different priorities, and then understanding the business outcome from all those priorities, and then ranking them in terms of, okay, this one's going to give us the best ROI, the quickest payback. This one's going to solve a really urgent and important customer issue, so we need to absolutely do that, which is going to, mitigate churn. So for each of the initiatives in terms of where you're going to deploy that money, you really need to understand what are the business outcomes, and then, do a quick ROI to say, okay, this is a good use of money in the short term that's going to solve this problem, and this is the expected payback. So it's just the discipline around making sure that everyone understands that it's not just, hey, I need to hire 5 people in the dev team to deliver this. What are they going to deliver? How are they going to help the business plan? And what's the expected outcome? More revenue, less churn, more efficiencies, which means, less people as you scale. All of that needs to be documented, and then you make a decision with the CEO and with the C-suite to say, this is a good use of cash. This one can wait.
One of the things we talked about a few weeks ago when we were having a catch up was growth mindset, and how vital it is in challenging economic circumstances or trading circumstances to see the benefits from it. But in the moment, sometimes you can't see that, right? How do you define growth mindset, and from your perspective, and is there any way of capturing that moment earlier on so it's not a retrospective, this was a good thing because I learned this?
Really good question. So the growth mindset is really about making sure that you identify quickly your areas that you need to focus on, and be not defensive when you get that feedback, right? In the sense where, okay, I accept this is where I need to go, and this is where I'm going to put my focus on. I think what I've learned over the years is, you as a leader need to give feedback to your team, but ask for feedback from your team as well. It's really important that your team tell you how you're managing them and how you're performing. And that's often kind of neglected, because you feel as a CFO, I'm only going to be giving community feedback one way. Really get that bottoms up as well. It's so valuable, but be open to it, and then explore how to challenge and how to grow and how to always continually learn. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It's just difficult sometimes when you're going through a really tough time as a finance director or a CFO. 6 months later, when you come through it, you go, oh, growth mindset, I learned this from that, and actually it's beneficial for the company and for me that we've had that experience. But is it possible to catch it in the moment and actually enjoy it a little bit more because something good's going to come from it? Have you had that or not?
Yes, I have had that, and it's really just embracing it and just being open to it, and again, not being defensive, just listening and just being open to it. I have had that in my career. Yes.
Cool. Look, there's one more question, and then we'll wrap it up unless there's any more that come through really quickly. This is a finance systems question. So any recommendations for finance systems for a startup or scale up type company? What have you used in the past and liked?
Xero is really good for startups. In France, Cassie, you can ping me. There's a couple of solutions that we use here because I'm based in France, and we're actually switching systems, but I can talk to you offline and give you some advice on that.
Cool. I've not heard of Penny Lane. So, well, look, thank you so much. I have really enjoyed that. I hope you have. And we will arrange another one soon. And Cassie, feel free to reach out to Jimmy. And anything else you want to share, Jimmy, before we kind of sign off?
No, just it's been a real pleasure. And if there are any questions offline, feel free to ping me. I'd be more than happy to connect offline.
Cool. Well, I'll drop you a call in a minute, Jimmy. Thank you everyone who could make it, and those watching on record. Hope it was a good session, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.